Beat Radio, presented by Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington and Southern Stone Restaurant.
Works over the middle, second guesses, fires, throws. Does he make the catch in the end zone? Yes! Touchdown! Oladipo to win it.
Another one!
He got
Another
it!
one! Another one!
Huge hole! He's at the 30! He's gonna go! 10, 5, touchdown! Jonathan Taylor!
Worked out by Burke. Bounces into Cody. Puts it up. Scores!
Now, from the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios, here's your host, Jim Coyle.
Happy Friday, everybody. Welcome in. Indiana Sports Beat Radio coming to you from the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios. Jim Coyle here as always. Dylan Sinn joining me from the Fort Wayne Journal-Gazette. How are you, sir?
I'm good. How are you, Jim?
I cannot complain. Just looking, there's all kinds of stuff going on across the sports landscape. Still trying to catch up to it all, man. There's just a lot happening. We had football from last night, football tomorrow, basketball all around us. It's just a cornucopia of things. Jim Calhoun retires again from the basketball period, I guess. Where was he coaching? Some Division III school?
I had not even heard that he retired. So yeah, that's obviously he had not been in Division I for quite a while, but yeah, Saint Joseph is where he was. The Division III Saint Joseph, not the Division I one.
Yeah, the first thing I read says Jim Calhoun is retiring, and this time he means it. Sort of. The former Connecticut head coach announced Thursday he is stepping down from his position at Division III University of St. Joseph's, effective immediately, which is odd since the season is upon us. Yeah. His assistant, Glenn Miller, will take over. The Hall of Fame coach, of course, retired before turning UConn over to his assistant, Kevin Ali, in 2012. That lasted all of 6 years. Calhoun going back to work at West Hartford-based St. Joseph's in 2018. And before he had arrived, they hadn't even admitted men, let alone had a basketball team. So he, in essence, started the basketball program there.
All right.
So there's that. Hey, he was asked, asked if he was going to be okay in retirement this time around. Calhoun, who's been in coaching for more than 50 years, kind of laughed and said, probably not. But yeah, that's how those guys usually are. But I guess you get to a certain place and you're good with it.
Sure.
Last night, how about Malik Cunningham for Louisville? Lamar Jackson, of course, set all kinds of records there. Almost had a rushing record broken last night by Malik Cunningham. Missed it by 2 yards. But Malik Cunningham with over 500 yards of offense and 7 touchdowns in a win over Duke.
Yeah.
That's nuts, man.
Yeah. I mean, Duke is really rough right now, but 60 points in that game for Louisville, 62 in that game. So yeah, heck of a game for Malik Cunningham. They've been kind of building a little bit here the last couple of years or so. That program was in really rough shape immediately after Lamar left, and they've been kind of building back a little bit. And they're bowl eligible this year. So good for Louisville. They seem to be on the rise once again.
Let's see. The Patriots dominated Atlanta last night. That was a shutout. What was that? 28-7, 28-0, something like that.
Yeah.
I didn't even watch that game. It was not. I was like, I'm not watching that game. It was not worth watching.
25-0 was the final.
25-0. Kind of an odd score, but there you go. Also, speaking of the Bucs, Antonio Brown's COVID-19 vaccination card claims that it was fake. The Bucs said that they have found no irregularities with it, but there have been claims that he has his card faked. So there's that. Mine's real, I can promise you.
Yeah, it was basically someone said that I believe it was his former chef is the one that is alleging that the card is fake. So obviously someone that he used to work with, who obviously maybe they have an agenda in some way. It's unclear at that point, but It's interesting that that's the source. We know who the source is.
Yep, got a bunch of people jumping on already. Hey to Chris down from New Albany, the Music Man, Michael, Ross down in Southern Kentucky, Sam Joaquin. He's in the backyard of Walt Disney World in Winter Garden, Florida. Man, making me jealous there. Dwayne, he's down in the southwest part of the state. I know that's Sam and Brian. Hagedorn saying hello to everybody. Lots of people hitting us up on the Andy Moore Honda hotline already. Tim down there in New Albany as well. Force down in Georgia. The Truth. Robert Carter down there around Evansville. So a lot of people jumping on already. So appreciate that. Let's see what else. I was going to talk about. There was something else. Dick Vitale going to call the Gonzaga UCLA game on November 23rd between his cancer treatments. So Dickie V getting back out on the court, or on the mic, I guess I should say, for a big game, no less.
It's a big game. Those are number one and number two teams in the country right now.
Yeah, that's a giant. When is that? November 23rd? Yeah, that's
Monday.
Whoo, baby. Yeah,
I can't wait to watch that one. Sorry.
Unfortunately, Indiana has a game at that day as well.
Yeah, Indiana plays Louisiana on Sunday.
Yep.
And then they have another
back
game.
At it again. I think it's Jacksonville State, maybe.
Jackson State, yes. Also
Jackson State.
Also on Tuesday.
We got married in a fever, hotter than a pepper sprout. Isn't that where they got married? Out of Jackson. And then kind of I don't want to call it an odd story. It's sad. It's scary, really, involving a tennis pro from China. Peng Shuai, I think, I'm just guessing on her name, but she has a title from Wimbledon, I think from the French Open, has appeared in the Olympics. 2 weeks ago, she posted about a sexual assault from a Chinese government official, and she has not been heard from or seen since. That's what it's like to live in China, people. So the next time you want to bitch or moan about something, think about that. I mean, seriously. That's just the scariest thing in the world. For someone to already fearing and then to disappear like that. I don't know what has happened. Hopefully it's not the worst, but there's some odd stuff that goes on out there, guys. I mean, every time you think you have it bad, trust me, there are many places that are worse and many things that are worse, but even the Chinese, they kind of remind me of the movie, The Concussion. There's a scene that has stuck with me from that movie forever. And daggone, I cannot think of the actor's name that is doing the speaking at the time, but he's talking to Will Smith's character and he's trying to explain to him the power that the NFL now has. And it's just the greatest little montage. And he's trying to explain it to him. And he says, look, Sundays used to belong to the church. Now it's theirs. And that quick line, when he says it's theirs, he's talking about the NFL. But now Sundays, they don't belong to church anymore. They belong to the NFL. And it's true. But, of course, that is not even close to what we're talking about there in China with that power. But it goes back to the NBA a couple years ago when the Rockets GM said something about China, and buddy, the hammer dropped. If you remember that, a lot of fallout from that. So it's just an odd, sad situation that goes on in around there. But Tim makes a comment asking, how about Indiana High School 15-player super team with CJ Gunn listed? Yeah, I think he's talking about from the Indy Stars super team, I'm assuming. There's going to be a lot of those guys on there. We'll get to that. Kyle Neddenrip joins us each week, and we'll talk about that. But high school basketball about to get started. They're finishing up high school football, Dylan. This is a big week.
Yeah.
This determines who gets to play at Lucas Oil. Talked about that with Kyle yesterday but some big games. I can't remember. Are anybody left from Fort Wayne?
Oh, yeah. We have a couple teams, not from Fort Wayne proper, but we have a team from Butler. East Side is in the semi-state for the first time in its history. And then Adams Central up there in Monroe. They are in the semi-state and looking to go to the state title game after South Adams, their main rival, went there last year. So we have two teams. I will be at the Adams Central game as they take on North Judson tomorrow.
Oh, the famous North Judson, the Fighting Juddies. I'm just kidding. Yeah. I don't know what their nickname is. College basketball last night. The Gavitt games continued. How about Xavier, man? They look good early in the season. Ohio State was a step behind them all night. I tried to watch that game. I was doing two things at once, but it's like they could never get, they were close, but they could never get to them. Xavier was able to keep them at arm's length the entire night, it seemed, or entire game, I should say.
Yeah. I mean, the Gavitt games outside of Indiana have not gone well for the Big Ten. I believe
sucked.
I believe the Big East won 6 of the 8 games. Including, as you said, the Ohio State Xavier game, which is a great matchup, by the way. The kudos to the Gavitt games for setting up Ohio State Xavier. Nice kind of an interregional matchup there. They don't really compete for recruits per se, but that's a nice feather in the cap for Xavier to beat Ohio State. And Ohio State has some things to figure out. I think people kind of assumed that because they were good last year, they were going to be at the top of the Big Ten or near it again this year. And the problem is that Dwayne Washington was a significant part of their offense last year. And when I say significant, I mean that they didn't have anyone else who could get his own shot when they really needed it. And we saw that down the stretch of the season in the Big Ten tournament when he won it for them. And then we saw it in the NCAA tournament when they lost to a 15 seed, that they just didn't have anyone else who could get their own shot. And so he's gone now playing for the G League. And Ohio State doesn't really have anyone that is capable of really filling it up and creating off the dribble, it doesn't seem like to me. EJ Liddell is a great player, but he's not that guy. And so Ohio State's going to take a while to figure it out here, I think.
Penn State picked up a win as they beat San Francis of Brooklyn, 74-59. Iowa beat Alabama State, 108-82. Just looking at some games of note. Kansas picked up an 88-59 win over Stony Brook. Let's look down through there. Virginia Tech beat St. Francis. Northwestern beat Fairleigh Dickinson, 82-46, almost doubling the score there. The Sycamores, Indiana State, go on the road and beat Old Dominion. Big, 77-36 in the Myrtle Beach Invitational, which means they could be facing Oklahoma, I think, because I think Oklahoma's playing in that. I think I saw that they beat East Carolina, barely, 79-74. So that'll be an interesting matchup. The Sycamores get that. That's all of the games of note that I see. Tonight, however, back on the schedule. What do we have? Oh, come on, man. You got to jump over there for me. Oh, man. Not the one I was looking for. There we go. I hate when they change how they list these things. 3 whole games scheduled tonight. That's not true. It's in the Big Ten. I've got the Big Ten pulled up. Maryland's at home to Hofstra.
College basketball time.
3 games in the Big Ten is what I should have said, though. Maryland's at home to Hofstra. Minnesota is hosting your guys, Purdue Mastodons.
Oh, yeah.
And then Nebraska hosting Idaho State. Those are the Big Ten games on the docket for tonight. And then, but we're looking at high school football. I think we were late for a break. We are. Let's do that. We got a big schedule as always. Alec Lasley is going to join us next. We're talking some recruiting and getting caught up on Indiana basketball. Zach Osterman is going to join us today from the Indy Star. And, of course, Jeffrey the Greek. We'll look forward to having fun with that. Back right after this.
We'll be right back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington and Southern Stone Restaurant.
Whether it's a celebration. Man, that first segment goes so fast.
Yeah.
What up?
What's going on?
How you guys doing?
Oh, I'm here.
Seem a little tired there.
I'm
Long
worn
week?
out, man. This last 2 weeks have just kicked my ass.
Yeah, I mean,
And
it
then
never
this-
helps with the basically 9:30 tip either.
Oh,
On,
and then
That's right, because it was
Wednesday,
delayed too. They didn't start
Yeah.
until like 9:15.
Yeah.
9:23.
So, but who's counting, right? You weren't
Just a
paying
few
attention to
minutes.
that
Just a
start
few
time.
minutes here and there. Yeah. Yeah.
I bet it'll happen again when they play Syracuse.
Getting home
Granted,
at
that's an away
1:30.
game, but
Yeah,
still.
getting home at 1:30 in the morning when you live in the same place where the games are played, that sucks
Yeah.
ass.
Should try doing what I did and drive home
Oh.
from Bloomington to Fort Wayne at 1:30 in the morning.
Yeah, I've never had that bad of a drive. Well, I guess I shouldn't say never, but back in the day, I was driving back to Southern Indiana. I remember going back home after the Duke game and leaving the press room at like 1:30, and I'm like,
Yeah.
this sucks. And having to be on the air at 6 a.m.
Yeah.
That's garbage. Excuse me.
Yeah, tell me about it.
So,
You might as well not even go to sleep.
The 9 o'clock starts. It's just,
I
it's
don't
just
know that I
ridiculous.
did.
But we can we can talk about Trey Galloway a little bit.
Oh, yeah.
Make sure I mention him. I don't know how much of a loss that's going to be right now, just because they have so many guards. But it's tough for him because he was clearly slated to get some playing time. So
Yeah, but I think that was going to go away here as soon as Big Ten play starts. They're going to have about an 8-man rotation, and he's not going to be part of it.
yeah, probably.
I think this just helps Mike Woodson.
I think to an extent, I think the main difference with Mike Woodson is he even said it post game. We can talk about it a little just with kind of rotations, but I don't know if you heard him talk about Michael Dorr. The reason he didn't play just because that it wasn't a good matchup, right? So
Right.
a lot of these rotations are going to be sometimes he'll play 10 guys, sometimes he'll play 7, sometimes the 8th guy will get literally 2 minutes.
And I hope, and I want you to bring that up because
Yeah.
that's exactly what did not happen before.
All right,
It's
here
like-
we go.
Yeah.
10 seconds.
Podcast or on this station each weekday. If we're not on the station where you live, we should be. Ask for Indiana Sports Beat Radio.
This segment is brought to you by Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington. Now back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington and Southern Stone Restaurant.
Welcome back. It is Friday. Indiana Sports Beat Radio brought to you by our great friends at Southern Stone Restaurant and Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington. Don't forget to the coaches shows held at Southern Stone Restaurant, in addition to the post-game basketball shows, and, of course, Andy Moore Honda in Bloomington. Best deals in the world. Alec Lasley from thehoosier.com joining us now. How's it going, man?
Good, guys. How you doing?
Cannot complain. Dylan Sinn with me as well. First of all, I guess we got to talk about Trey Galloway. Indiana going to lose him for probably 6 weeks, but it's good to have. I think this biggest loss for him or to the team for him is going to be in practice, not having another good body like that to continue to press, because as this season starts to get closer to Big Ten play, that playing rotations are probably going to shrink down. But he was certainly getting some minutes up till now, Alec.
Yeah, and I mean, I think the biggest thing with Mike Woodson, he even talked about it a lot when he was building the roster coming into the season, is he thinks of it a lot as how he did in the NBA, right? Everyone has a role, everyone has a specialty, and if you don't have that specific role or specialty that you can do really well, you're not going to play. And I think the one thing with Trey Galloway that you are going to miss is just kind of that secondary ball handler that he could be on the floor. Move Xavier off the ball, move Rob off the ball, move Tamar off the ball, anything like that. A guy who doesn't really get flustered too much with pressure. And then also on the defensive end, right? He's, a bigger, more physical style guard who can guard kind of 1 through 3. Mike Woodson likes to switch. The only person he doesn't like to switch with is Trace Jackson-Davis and kind of get him into ball screens. But Trey Galloway could guard almost any perimeter position and do it really well. So I think you will lose a little bit on that end. And just that kind of secondary ball handler that he would be able to play offensively. But, we talked about it at the break there, that the biggest thing with Mike Woodson is he's not going to play you just because you're in the top, 7-8 of his rotation. He's going to play to the matchup. And that's one thing that a lot of college coaches who are kind of first-year college coaches or even kind of still early in their careers don't really understand. He's bringing that from the NBA, right, where it's all about matchups. It's, hey, if you're beating your guy off the dribble every single time, we're just going to keep going back to you and just play one-on-one until they can stop you. And with him, he talked about Michael Dorr after the game. He got 2 or 3 minutes, I think, early in that first half and didn't sniff the floor the rest of the game. And he said it wasn't fair to put him out there because it just wasn't the right matchup, right? St. John's was a lot smaller, quicker, perimeter oriented. And there was no reason to have a rim protector there because you saw how many threes they shot. What was Michael Dorr going to do out there on the floor? So that's the thing with his rotation. Trey Galloway could see 20 minutes one night and then maybe 5 minutes the next, just because that wasn't the night for him. And they've talked all about just be ready when it's your time, next man up mentality. And Mike Woodson has really, really been preaching that throughout the first 3 games. And I think you're really going to see that now moving forward with at least one person out of the rotation for the next 6 weeks.
And Dylan, I think that right there is a change, because what we saw before is rinse, wash, repeat. Didn't matter who was coming in. It didn't matter what their style was. You were going to see the same thing from Indiana. You were going to see the same exact lineup, play the same exact way, play the same exact defense. And that's not happening now. And it's called making adjustments. So there you go.
It's interesting because as Alex said, the Michael Durr was not the right matchup because St. John's made it. So they basically said, we are going to go small and we are going to try to, if they don't adjust, we're going to make this guy guard out to the perimeter, which he has not shown that he's capable of doing. No disrespect to him. He's 7 feet tall. That's a difficult task. And then when he went out, they basically said, okay, we'll try to attack Trace. And Trace is good enough that he was able to kind of stay out of that trap, essentially. But Alec, I guess I wanted to ask you, with Trey out, who is going to pick up some of the minutes that he would have gotten if the matchup were correct? Who do you think is in line to get some of those minutes?
Yeah, well, I think right away, Tamar's minutes are just going to skyrocket. Obviously, we saw what he did, playing 27 minutes and basically played from the under 8 timeout to the end of the game there in crucial minutes, as as his 3rd game in his college career. So I think you're going to see a lot of those kind of Xavier, Rob, Tamar kind of guard rotations. Keep that really tight. But obviously the guy to look at is Christian Lander. I think he's now proved in this 9 to 11 minutes of action that he's gotten this season that he does deserve to get at least some spot minutes here and there, because you don't want to run into the same situation where Xavier Johnson picks up 4 fouls at the 9-minute mark, 10-minute mark, and you're going to have to play almost the rest of the half without him. And this is another thing going back to rotations and Christian Lander specifically. Rob Finney did not play his best game on Wednesday. He really, really struggled, not only beating the press and beating that pressure that St. John's brought on the guards there. And he barely played in the second half. He went to Christian Lander because Rob Finney was not the guy. And Christian Lander obviously stepped up in a big way and now proved that he deserves some more minutes. So I think having him on the floor with a Xavier Johnson, with a Parker Stewart to kind of stretch the floor a little bit, and then a Tamar Bates, I think you have a lot of good guard rotations and a lot of quickness and a lot of guys who can get out in transition, just like Lander did on that bucket. Not even running the break. He was not the main ball handler on that break. Caught the ball around half court after the long outlet there, took 2 or 3 dribbles and got into the lane. So I think having those quick guards on the outside is going to benefit Indiana, even if it does maybe lose a little bit on the defensive end with Christian Lander instead of Trey Galloway. But offensively, I think you're going to gain a lot, and you're going to see a lot more quickness on the floor.
Yeah, Christian Lander is a guy that if he, we've seen, continues to gain confidence now in his second season, but if he does, he can be so dangerous with the ball in his hands because he's someone that other teams, they have to keep account of because of his speed. We saw the other night, he getting to the rim for him and able to do that quickly. They have to keep account of him. And if Indiana's, the rest of their parts are not doing what they need to do, that is what makes a team dangerous.
Yeah, and I think the biggest thing with him is he just needs to continue to play within himself. We saw last year in the spotty minutes, the inconsistent minutes that he did get, the reason he was so inconsistent was because he was obviously trying to force the issue because he knew I was only going to get, maybe 1 or 2 minutes here or there. And I didn't really know what I was supposed to do, right? They didn't have a designated role for him. And again, that goes back to Mike Woodson having a very specific role for everyone. And when Christian Lander's in the game, he's going to get those 5, 6, 7 minutes, whatever it is. So go out there, pick up those 3 fouls like he did in 3 minutes early on Wednesday, but you're going to play through those minutes. You're going to play through a turnover. I just need you out there. I need to, see what you can do early in these games to make sure that I have, the full confidence in you to put you in a St. John's game like that down the wire there. And obviously, like we just said, he definitely proved that he deserves those minutes. But it's more specifically because he's been playing within himself, and he's not even the jump shot that he took, the 3 that he took against St. John's was a good look. It wasn't forced. It wasn't off of a couple dribble step back that we saw him do a lot last year. He's just playing a lot more confident in the fact that he knows if he misses a shot or makes a mistake, he's still going to play through that. And that's the biggest benefit that I think a lot of these guys are seeing is they're not going to get yanked after, 1 turnover or 1 foul or getting beat on 1 defensive possession just because Mike Woodson kind of knows what he wants out of those guys. And he knows a lot of these guys are still going to make mistakes learning the system. So just have them play through it and they're going to get confidence along the way.
And then, of course, Indiana picks up another commitment from Gabe Cupps. No surprise there for me at all. I mean, the guy was basically living in Bloomington, just joking. He had been here 5 times, and that's okay or normal if you live in the Indianapolis area or something. But the dude was coming from Ohio. So you make 5 visits to a school and you live in an entire state away. Yeah, you're pretty serious about that school.
Yeah, and it like we had talked about before, it was pretty much going to come down to Indiana and Ohio State. Obviously, Stanford was in that final 3, but it was pretty much going to be between one of those 2 schools. And the biggest thing, he just needed to see Indiana in action. Obviously, he visited on Friday, the Friday before he committed, saw exactly what he needed to see, and that was 1, exactly how Coach Woodson and that coaching staff interacted with the players on the floor. 2, kind of how those guards really ran the offense. Obviously, it's one thing to see in practice, which you saw before when he came to one of IU's practices, but to actually see it in the game and see kind of those rotations and see how they pressure, see how they run the floor. That was the only thing that he needed. And in talking to him and his dad after the fact, they went into that visit pretty much knowing it was going to be Indiana. They just needed that confirmation that, hey, what we're hearing, what we've seen so far is going to translate in the game. And that's exactly what ended up happening.
Yeah, there's very few recruits, Dylan, that I would, if you were going to bet, that I would bet on just because of how they go. I would have put money on that one just because of what I said. The visit, you could tell the interest was just there. And I keep saying this and I don't know why, but he reminds me of maybe a little more athletic Neil Reed type, kind of a scrappy shooter, just kind of all around, just one of those guys that's probably going to dive on the floor for loose balls and just one of those guys that you love having on your team.
Yeah, it's nice to have him in the fold already. IU having 2 commitments in 2023 already is a significant boost for that class. And you can kind of start building from here. It's interesting. The last 2 Indiana coaches have had a class that was ranked very, very high among the top ones in the country, and neither of them really panned out. And that's part of the reason that Indiana has kind of struggled in the middle of their tenure. So Tom Crean had 2012. Yogi Ferrell was the only one that really panned out from that class, and Archie Miller had 2018. Which Romeo Langford is obviously part of it, but then you had Jerome Hunter and Jake Forrester and a couple other guys. And so I'm wondering if 2023 is setting up to be possibly that class for Woodson as we get going here in that cycle, and if he can build that type of class that really gets the momentum going for the program.
Quickly, Alec, recruiting-wise now, where does Indiana look to? Already a couple of guards in the fold. I know that they're looking to some bigs.
Yeah, I mean the 2 now, obviously, just like what Dylan said, they're set up perfectly now for 2023. I'm pretty sure they're the only class right now that has multiple commitments in that 2023 class. But they're both in the backcourt, right? That's what Mike Woodson wants to build, is that backcourt. Now you continue to have that rotation of potentially, right, CJ Gunn, Jalen Hood-Schifino, Ja'Kai Newton, Gabe Cupps, and whoever else is staying by that class and by that year. The wings are set, so you look to the front court, and the 2 guys are KJ Evans from Montverde Academy, teammates of Jalen Hood-Schifino. He's a top 5 player in the class, kind of that hybrid 4, stretch 4 kind of wing player, but super athletic, a guy who almost any program in the country is going to be going after. Indiana could potentially get a visit from him after the season. So he's one guy to keep an eye on. And then Xavier Booker, right? He's the in-state guy that everyone knows from Cathedral. And the one guy who I think a lot of people are really interested to see how he plays this high school season. Hasn't played a lot throughout his high school career. Didn't play a ton this past summer. Had a few injuries in some of the events that I went to. Obviously went to the Pangos camp and really showed out there and really had some really strong performances against some of the top players in any class. So I think he's the one guy that Indiana fans are really kind of zoning in on, of kind of those front court players. And the best thing about having 2 kind of top 150 guys already in your class is now you can really swing for the fences and go after these top 10, top 20, top 30 guys, because you already have your foundation set. And you already have guys who are at least going to be there for 2 years. And you've done that now in back-to-back classes, even looking with what he did with, getting Tamar Bates there at the end. You have a guy who can potentially be, 1 and done, 2 and done, but then you also build your class around 2-3 guys that are going to be there for at least 3-4 years. And that's the biggest thing. Archie Miller tried to do that, but he always whiffed on those, for the most part, outside of Romeo, on those guys who were instant impact players. Obviously, we've seen already Tamar Bates is an instant impact player. I think everyone's expecting Jalen Hood-Schifino to be an instant impact player. So as long as you get 1 to 2 of those guys in every single class and then build out the rest of that class like Mike Woodson is doing with Gabe Cupps and Ja'Kai Newton, you're going to be set up for success. And that's one thing that he's done obviously great already. And then you look into the transfer portal to kind of maybe land another 1 or 2 of those impact players.
Make sure you check out and follow Alec Lasley from the Hoosier.com, Indiana Rivals, for complete coverage on Indiana recruiting and everything else going along with that. Complete coverage on this weekend's games, of course, with football tomorrow and then again basketball on Sunday, man.
Yep, exactly. I mean, it's obviously we're winding down the football season, but I think everyone's pretty excited to focus their sole attention, if it's not already, on Indiana basketball moving forward here.
Alex, appreciate you, man.
Appreciate it, guys. Have a good one.
Thanks,
Alec
Alex.
Lasley from the Hoosier.com, Indiana Rivals. We got more coming up here. Plenty more. Zach Osterman to join us, Jeffrey the Greek, and we've got Dylan Sinn from Fort Wayne Journal-Gazette back with all that right after this.
We'll be right back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington and Southern Stone Restaurant.
The baseball season.
Have you been on with Jeffrey the Greek yet?
I have, yeah. I was on a couple of weeks ago. He's it's been a great addition to the show, hasn't it?
Oh, we have a blast. We just started laughing.
He
I
does
have
2
not been
segments
a-
with him now.
Oh,
I
wow.
and I've never been a big bettor because I can't stand losing money that I don't have.
Sure.
But I've been betting a little bit, but it's like 50. If I bet $100, that's because I've won money and
Yeah.
there's money in there. But I generally bet $50 3-team parlays or 3-leg parlays. God dang it. I had one the other night. I've been talking about it.
Like every week so far, this has happened. You've come so close.
That's why those things aren't built on winners. But daggone, I needed Indiana to cover by 5, and I should have been smart enough to just take the money line on that because I had 2 of the 3 legs. But
Now that's a term I don't understand still in betting money.
What's
line.
that?
What is the money line?
straight up,
Like
that means
just
you take
pick the winner.
yeah,
Yeah.
you're just taking the winner straight up, not giving or
Okay.
getting points.
And so you get better odds for that. So if you're picking a team that's an underdog on the money line, if you bet say $10, you can win 25.
More.
If it's yeah, exactly.
And vice versa, though, if you're a team that is giving up points
Yeah.
and you bet them on the money line, then it goes a little under. But I should have done that because it probably wouldn't have affected it like $40, and it would have still paid $300, and I would have won barely. But I'm not in no way am I an experienced gambler, nor do I recommend gambling to any of those listening at home. Of course, it's all for entertainment purposes.
Don't be betting that Doge coin or Bitcoin or any of those cryptocurrencies.
That's not betting. That's just speculating.
Yeah, this week has worn me out, man. And
At least we got a short week next week, sort of.
No,
Like,
and on
we're
top of
gonna
that-
do a Friday show, right? Next week.
today, so I'm not going to do jack with high school tonight, but got a football game tomorrow, which will go into the evening. So it's a late night. Then you got a damn Sunday night basketball game. Who in the hell schedules college basketball on Sunday night
Whenever you got
Those are for other
football
teams.
on Saturdays right now.
so we can watch them at home, not
There you
have to
go.
travel to them?
$0 down. Get more to your door with Andy
Dylan, are
Moore
you
Honda
frozen or are you
.com.
not laughing?
Come see us at the
I-
all-new Andy Moore Honda.
I'm not laughing at you, Jim.
Everyone
This
is.
segment is brought to
I
you
can't
by
hear anyone now.
Aurora Specialty Sleep Clinic.
Now it's back.
Now back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington and Southern Stone Restaurant.
Hey, it is Friday. Welcome back. Make sure you head out to Southern Stone Restaurant, corner of Patterson and Rogers in Bloomington. That's where they have the Indiana basketball and football coaches shows Monday night. Mike Woodson is there at 7:05, and the Wednesdays for another week or so, Tom Allen. As the football season is coming to a close, I'm never one of those that is always like, let's get it over. This season, I'm ready. Let's get it over.
Yeah.
Done with it. It's there's just nothing good to talk about. Actually, we're waiting on the bad. It's undoubtedly there has to be changes made, and I think they need to be made pretty quickly, Dylan. And I'm talking about on the football staff. I asked Tom Allen about that after the game the other night, and I knew what the answer was going to be. And it's I asked the question only to see what his response was, other than I knew it was going to be. I knew Indiana is not a place that generally is going to. We saw it's been 2 weeks now since Nebraska, cleared out their offensive staff. I knew that's not something we're going to see from Indiana, Dylan, but as things continue to go bad, it wasn't necessarily the answer could have been this week. We're looking at maybe having Delon McCullough make play calls or something. I don't know. I mean, you never know. If you don't ask, that's the thing. If you don't ask the question, you're not going to get the answer.
Yeah.
But and I've seen a lot of people talk about that because there's been obviously a lot of the focus has been on Nick Sheridan and the offense. The offense has sucked. How much blame does he get? I don't really know, to be honest with you, because the offensive line sucks. They've just not done well this year. They just haven't performed. And it's the same guys that they had. So you're like, what, why? Same thing with the offense, minus some running backs. And I understand why some of those guys left. That was more of a coaching change, I think, than as much as anything. But still, the offense just has looked like it has been going downhill from day one, which I suspected. And I go back to the bowl game last year. That was the most horrific game plan for that game ever. Terrible. So I expect a change. I'm not going to lie. I expect the change to be made at offensive coordinator. As hard as that's going to be for Tom Allen, it's got to be made. But a long way to get to there, Dylan. I've had a lot of people talk about Delon McCullough. He's never been a coordinator to my knowledge, has he?
Not as far as I know.
And I'm pretty sure that I have been told by people in position that Tom Allen has always said he would only hire a coordinator that had been a coordinator at some, at least at some level prior to that. Now, I don't know that he stays with that or not.
Delon McCullough was a head coach in high school for 5 years. I don't think that counts in Tom Allen's mind. We will see.
Tom Allen's only head coaching experience was in high school.
Maybe he thinks that that's something similar, but yeah, you had to ask the question. I think you wouldn't be doing your job if you didn't ask the question. And it is interesting that they're not going to make any changes until after the season, because that's generally been the way it's gone in college football, except this year, where, as you said, Nebraska is not the only one. There have been a significant number of teams that have said, we have something that's a problem. We're going to fix it right now. And it happened at Florida. They fired Todd Grantham, defensive coordinator. It happened at Washington, where they fired the offensive coordinator before firing the head coach a week later. They fired Justin Fuente at Virginia Tech has been shown the door. So there have been more mid-season, in-season departures of coaches this year than any season I can remember.
But all those schools you just listed, all are much more successful football programs in Indiana.
Yes,
which should also say something.
Yeah.
But the thing that I also want a bigger reason why a lot of these are happening sooner. The early signing period used to be in February. It's now in December.
Yeah.
We're 1 month away from the early signing period. So those schools did not want to lose any recruiting advantages that they had. I'm not sure if Indiana wins or loses on their recruiting here. They've either talked to their guys, and I don't know.
No. I mean, it's interesting because we saw with USC when they fired their coach, Clay Helton, back in week 2 after they lost to Stanford.
Week 2.
Yeah,
week 2.
Right. But what they did was they elevated the recruiting coordinator to head coach for the rest of the season.
Which I have never heard of in my entire life.
Never. But they basically said, we are going to do everything. We don't care about the rest of the season at all. We are going to do everything we can to salvage a recruiting class. So the next coach that we hire doesn't come in completely behind the 8 ball because we have a null class in 2022. And I think that goes exactly to your point about that December signing period comes up extremely quickly. And teams are trying to position themselves earlier and earlier to make sure that if you have to make a change, the new coach isn't coming in without a class to stand up.
The one thing Tom Allen did say, though, when I asked that question, John, you don't have that, do you, by chance?
No, it's gone.
Okay. Well, it's still up on the site from, it was actually from the post-game press conference after last week's loss to Rutgers. It was the very last question on there, if you guys are going to look up there. But he did say, to the best of my remembrance, that he's looking at all that stuff has to be evaluated. Of course it does. Well, that stuff we already know, but
I have the quote here if you want me to read it out.
Yes, please.
Yes. Those decisions will be made when the season is over as just the evaluation. Nothing is going to happen right now. Everything gets evaluated. You have a season like this, you always evaluate everything anyways, but a season like this, things don't go the way you want them to go. You've got to take a hard look at every part of your program, all three phases, all the coaches, myself included. But bottom line is we've got to find a way to win a football game right now.
And I understand that. They need to win a game. They needed to win a game last week and this week because it's the only chances they have. Let's be honest. They and I rarely, if ever, say this, they have no chance in West Lafayette this season.
No.
I mean, Purdue would just have to completely implode and turn the ball over 6 times.
In a way that Purdue has not done at all this year. Purdue this year has been really impressive in the way that even the games they've lost, they've been in all of them. There's never been a game where they've really felt like they were out of it or that they really felt like they imploded in any way. They've been very, very consistent all season long, even in their losses. And so it leads me to believe that Indiana doesn't have much of a chance in that game. Quite frankly, I don't know how much of a chance they have in this game because Minnesota is pretty good too. They're
not only that, Indiana has obviously, I hate to say this, but mentally they've checked out because you have a team that should have beaten Cincinnati, should have beaten Michigan State. And now they can't even, they get 3 points on the board against a Rutgers team who had only put 20 on anybody else. They've checked out, man. They're gone. And that has got to be the hardest challenge for these coaches, just trying to get them to check back in for the game. Forget about practice, which they need desperately. They need to be better. Hell, how can you get a team to practice and be better when you're spending most of your time trying to get them to mentally check back in?
Yeah. And it's tough because this could be prime, like a learning experience for Donovan McCulley, who they think is going to be the quarterback of the future and should be the quarterback of the future. Maybe not next season, depending on what happens, but maybe the season after. And he's not getting good reps. He's getting reps, obviously, because they have no one else, but they're not good reps.
No,
but
you don't have a line that can protect you. You don't have a running game.
Right. The wide receiving core has not been where they wanted it to be. So he doesn't have the players surrounding him. And then he fumbles the first snap of the game, or the exchange goes bad on the first snap of the game against Rutgers. And it just feels like, oh, well, this is a wash now. And it's tough because this would be a great time. If you're not going to salvage anything from this season, it would be a great time to just get him as many reps as possible. But you want them to be good reps. You don't want him to build bad habits or anything like that. So that is probably that is should be the main focus these last 2 weeks is getting Donovan McCulley as much valuable experience as they can.
In January, Josh Hoover arrives on top of that. So next season, potentially the quarterback's room could look like Michael Penix, Jack Tuttle, Dexter Williams, McCulley, and Josh Hoover. That's not going to be the case.
Right. I would expect at least one of those guys transfers.
I think 2.
No, that would be it's 1 at the minimum. 2 would be most likely.
And one of those will be Dexter Williams, in my opinion. Mm-hmm. So it will be which one between Michael Penix Jr. and Jack Tuttle. don't see both of them here again for a third year together.
Yeah.
But neither one of them have. Here's my issue. Neither one of them have shown development. Now, I know that Michael Penix Jr. looked pretty good last year, but I would have to really go back and break down everything to see how good was his season really. But that's a question too, development. Why is Jack Tuttle hasn't developed? Now, he hasn't been the starting quarterback that whole time, but you know what? He's had a lot of reps. And for a guy that was a top 11 quarterback coming out of high school, the development I'm not seeing after this is his third year in college. You know, he was at Utah before coming here for 2 seasons. So he's had 3 years of college football, and the development does not seem to be there. I'm not blaming Jack Tuttle. I'm just saying you usually see a progressive development, and I'm not seeing that in the IU quarterbacks. And I think that's going to go into part of the change that happens.
Because they have that's one of the rooms next year. That's one of the rooms where they have the most talent. And the key to a bounce back season next year is going to be finding someone who unlocks that talent, whether it's Sheridan or someone else. You need to have someone that unlocks that talent in some way. And it didn't happen this year. Obviously, Penix and Tuttle got hurt. But Penix wasn't particularly good before he got hurt. And Tuttle was hit or miss before he got hurt. I think he was a little bit better. He had a really rough game against Michigan State, and he was better after that, before he got hurt. And I do think that there's something there. And I do think I would expect, and this is based on nothing, but I think I would expect Tuttle to be back more than Penix, just because I think that he feels he can be the starter. And Penix could be, obviously, but does he want to be here for another year in which he could get hurt again? I'm not sure.
Well, but where's he? My next question is, where would he go?
I mean, there's always schools that are willing to take chances on quarterbacks. So he would definitely, there would be suitors for him. Absolutely. It's just a question of whether he wants to stick around at IU or not. Maybe he does. Maybe he really feels like this is the place for him to be. He can recapture the success of 2020. But my guess would be that Tuttle is more likely to return than Penix, although again, based on nothing except kind of intuition here.
Well, I agree with you 100%, especially when Michael Penix Jr. has had 3 consecutive seasons end because of injury.
4.
It's
4 now.
Is it 4 now?
If he doesn't play again this year, it will be 4.
I've lost count. There are so many, and that would be unheard of in the history of college football, maybe.
It's really tough for him that he hasn't been able to stay healthy, and it's likely just a fluke, and there's nothing that IU could have done to prevent that, but you don't know that someone else couldn't prevent it, you know? So it's just something that he'll probably have to think about whether he wants to be back for another year with the program.
Hey, we got more coming up. As a matter, we're not ready for a break. John, did you need something?
No, we're ready for a break.
Really? Huh? 3 minutes before the hour, top of the hour. Okay. Unless my clock is wrong. Really? All right. I believe you. You're the producer. Hey, we got more coming up. Zach Osterman from the Indy Stars is going to join us next. And you know what comes after that? Jeffrey the Greek. That's one that fun time. That's when the clowns come out. Dun, 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 dun. That's what his walk-up music should be. Dun, 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 dun. You know the circus music, John?
Mm-hmm.
We're full of clowns here, man. Clowns to the left of me, jokers to the right. Here I am, stuck in the middle with you. Couldn't be happier. We're back with more on Indiana Sports Beat Radio right after this.
We'll be right back to the golf club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington and Southern Stone Restaurant. If you're in the market,
I'll do clown music if you want me to, or circus music, whatever you call it.
I was kidding. No, I was kidding. I'm the clown.
I was going to say, it'd be funny, but he may not get the context of it. Another reason to get out a couple minutes like before the actual top of the hour is because it gives Zach more time. Which I actually haven't heard from him, but usually I don't need to hear from him for him to join, but sometimes I do.
Yeah, we've never done that before. We always go up to
57 is the earliest we break for this segment. Yep.
See, I didn't.
It starts at the top of the hour. And there's always like a 3-minute window for each one that I like to try.
Whatever you say. Yeah. Did we talk about Jim Calhoun? We already did.
You did the beginning.
All right.
You didn't really. I mean, not that there's much to really, I guess, preview.
You
just talked about basketball in general, but
there's Zachary. What shirt we got on there, man?
Purple People Eaters.
Was that a bike team?
No, it was the Minnesota Vikings defensive line in the 70s.
Yes, I
They were called the Purple
remember
People
that. What was the one dude that ended up being a lawyer? Oh man, he was on that 4. I think he was on the end. Golly, dude was
Brad
smart as-
Culpepper. No, I'm kidding.
No,
He's a lawyer though.
I just have to look it up, and I'll tell you when I look it up and see their 4 names. I can't remember them. Were you a Vikings fan, Jim?
No, I picked up the shirt along the way.
Oh, a great shirt to have, though.
Yeah, the shirt is just cool by itself.
I mean, seriously, is it a retro shirt or some like new make it?
It's Homage, the t-shirt company out of Columbus.
Man, I had an old Rams shirt and it's too small for me. I grew up a Rams fan, but they moved to St. Louis and it aggravated me. But I'm back to being on.
One, Cheryl Sizemore from Remax Advanced Realty. Let Cheryl Sizemore get you in the home
Alan
you
Page.
want today. Cheryl at IndyHomePros.com.
That's who I'm thinking of.
This segment is brought to you by Yogi's Bar and Grill. Now back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington and Southern Stone Restaurant.
Hey, welcome back. It is Friday, and that means Zach Osterman from the Indy Star joining us, wearing a very, very good-looking Purple People Eater shirt. I couldn't see what it was, and he had to tell me, but as soon as he did, I'm like, oh, yeah. And I couldn't remember their names of the guys. It was those 4 guys that they spoke of on that because I was not a Vikings fan. You had to be growing up in the 70s. But Alan Page was I do remember him because I've seen him in lots of interviews. He played in the NFL from 68 to 76. He's a Hall of Famer. I think he went on to become an attorney. He was just super intelligent. Retired jurist. Dude was a smart guy, man. But that's back when men were men. Not that they're not men in the NFL today, but the stuff, if you don't watch NFL highlights from that era, that was brutal. They think it's brutal today. It was really brutal back then.
Yeah, I mean, obviously it was a different time too. I think around, things like steroids and how you took care of your body, what you put in your body, who you trusted to tell you what you could put in your body. And of course, I think that the one flip side is you probably didn't have guys that were just generating as much pure force as they do now in terms of guys that can run as fast, hit as hard, guys that are just as physically heavy as, how many 300-pound linemen were there back then? Now, you got them all.
Now you have linemen that can run as fast as probably some of the linebackers back then.
Right. But undeniably it was
brutal.
It was not it was a rough time. And I think we've heard enough stories from, players of that era to know that. So
Indiana basketball, of course, with taking a break, no pun intended, with Trey Galloway breaking his wrist on the flagrant foul, no less. And that's why that's in place. You hopefully that no one ever gets hurt like that. But now Trey Galloway is going to miss a minimum of 6 weeks off of that, which just sets him back a little bit is what it will do. It sets his growth back and his growth with this team back. And it probably hurts the team because he's a guy, obviously a guy that's been getting some minutes. So he's very valuable in practice as well. I'm sure they'll make do, but it's definitely a loss for him of sorts.
Yeah. I mean, he was clearly kind of a player that Mike Woodson had in mind as a piece, to that bench, which has been, so good through the first 3 games of the season. And I mean, it's funny. I always kind of remind people like 3 games doesn't seem like a lot, but it's 10% of your season. 10% of Indiana's season is gone now. And so we are at least kind of at a point where we feel like we can start making
mind-boggling
some strong inferences, in terms of just assessing what Woodson wants, how he sees certain things working and rotations being one of those. And it was, frankly, it was clear that Trey Galloway was in his thoughts in that regard. And we saw that in the Bahamas too. Now, again, it's not a season-ending injury as things stand. He, I think we could see him back sometime late December or January, which means there's still plenty of season for him. And the one advantage of a broken wrist, if you want to say that, is he can keep his conditioning up. There's going to be enough that he can do to stay, kind of court ready, even with the broken wrist, because he's going to be able to run and he's going to be able to do, I'm guessing enough kinds of lifts and things like that once he's through surgery, which is supposed to be today. But, it does hurt Indiana, and it's kind of one of those moments where you turn to somebody else, Christian Lander or Anthony Leal or whoever, and just say, are you going to be able to step in for us here?
Well, that's Dylan. Now somebody is going to get that opportunity. Christian Lander, of course, we were talking about him earlier, is one that we've seen here of late that has been given some extra minutes and has made the most of those minutes here of late. And he's probably going to get more opportunities.
Yeah, I think that's something that's definitely going to be the case going forward. He showed that he can handle the ball a little bit with Xavier and Rob Finney in foul trouble. I guess, Zach, the question that I have for you is what do you want to see from Lander going forward? He showed a fair amount in the game against St. John's, but what do you want to see from him going forward as he tries to kind of gain some more of those minutes at guard?
Well, I think there's a couple things that come to mind. Part of it is, I think we saw Wednesday night some of Christian Lander's defensive limitations in some of the, the early fouls he picked up. And I don't know how much those are going away. He's obviously a quick player, but he's never been the biggest. And, against high major opposition, you're going to have to be able to deal with guys that may be stronger than you. So that's one thing, is just, can he kind of make some improvements defensively? But actually, I thought one of the things, without wanting to put words in his mouth or act like I'm reading his mind, one of the things I really felt like you could see last season from Christian Lander was it felt like he was desperate to make things happen when he got on the floor. Like almost like it almost felt, at least from afar, like he felt compelled to sort of prove himself, as the 5-star reclassified, whatever. And at times I think that almost led him to kind of force things too much. And we can go back and find times where it certainly at least felt that way. What was interesting to me on Wednesday night was he got those two or three early fouls.
With 2 quick ones and then a third one.
And he got better from there. which tells me that mentally maybe he's in a stronger place than he was.
Well, another thing, he didn't get removed from the game after making those two.
No, I think there was an element of his coach, placing some faith in him, and I think that's clearly among Mike Woodson's methods is, and he said it from kind of very early on. I'm going to give guys chances to prove themselves to me, and if they do, I'm going to keep trusting them. But I just thought it was interesting to me that he came in and kind of struggled right away, but then he got better from there. And I think there's a lot of people. I think there's a lot of guys on this team that are probably in a better mental headspace than they were a season ago between the COVID stuff and the way that the season went and just kind of how things spiraled toward the end of the season for Indiana. So I don't think he's alone in this, but you just feel like there's more, probably maturity is part of it, but I just thought I saw a stronger player, from an intangible perspective on Wednesday night. And if he can kind of keep that confidence and obviously not turn the ball over, that's always going to be an issue. And I don't think he had any turnovers. Maybe he had one. But one way or the other, that if you're a point guard, like that's always on the top line of your remit. But if he can do that, I think, he can carve out a bit of a place for himself here.
Absolutely. And as they go forward, we will see that the rotation start to shrink a little bit anyway. I think that, but what we did see, and Alec brought up earlier, was that another difference between this Mike Woodson era is he's able to change his rotations to whom he's playing and make the adjustments. And he mentioned that's why Michael Durr didn't play as much the other night. He was in and then out because he said it wasn't fair. It was not the right matchup. That's not something we saw a year ago. We just saw the wash, rinse, and repeat method a year ago, where this year there may not be this may not be a great matchup for this particular player, so he may not play as much off the bench or whatever. Whereas Mike Woodson is really able to pick and choose who and what to put in when he does that.
No, that's obviously fair. I mean, that's obviously kind of bearing itself out that he feels like he's got a diverse enough team from a skill sets perspective to match up. And again, that's also a benefit of building, being intentional about building a deeper bench and trusting, more guys to be able to make an impact for you, and not saying I'm only going to go 8 or I'm only going to go 9. Maybe sometimes that leaves you a little overexposed. Maybe sometimes, we saw Wednesday night there was that extended stretch that probably wasn't very good for Indiana when neither Race Thompson nor Trace Jackson Davis was on the floor. But it's you don't build a deep bench for the micro of one game. You build it for the macro of navigating a whole season. And you do that, sort of hoping that, well, maybe being a little too deep might lose us this game, but it's going to win us these other 3 games. So in the profit loss, we're 3-1, and it's worth it. Sorry, that's me. But I think that I think it is, at least for the moment, a very positive development for a team that, really struggled. Has really struggled with that for about 3 years now. And some of that's been injuries, undeniably. Some bad luck with either guys that were out for long periods of time or guys that were playing with injuries for long periods of time, thinking about Al Durham, thinking about Romeo Langford, some others. But, from a tactical perspective, the value of a deep bench is obviously to give you the depth to rest guys, but it's also to be able to get into your rotations and then in the course of running through your rotations in a game, creating matchup problems for an opponent. So when Mike Anderson looks over, when Indiana's got its starting 5 on the floor and Mike Anderson looks over the scores table and sees Tamar Bates about to come in, he's got to wonder, okay, is he coming in for Miller Kopp and they're going to go with a 3-guard lineup? Is he coming in for Parker Stewart? Well, he's going to do different things to Parker Stewart. He's a lefty. He's not a righty. He's got maybe a little bit more trust in his mid-range. He's less experienced, but maybe a little more athletic. So now all of a sudden, now you've changed the calculus on Mike Anderson, and he's got to figure out how to adjust. If you don't have a bench, I mean, how many times in the last 2-3 months of last season did you feel like Indiana went to its bench and added something? And I'm not trying to pick on guys, but Indiana's bench was essentially its 4 freshmen by the end of last season. And that just was not, that was asking too much of those guys. Now they're a year older and they look better. Obviously, we haven't seen as much of Leal, but Galloway looked better before his injury. We talked about Lander. Jordan Geronimo's looked much better. And so some of that's just natural progression, but some of it is also that Indiana has built its bench intentionally in a way that makes those guys pieces that add something when they come on the floor, and therefore pieces that create some sort of new problem to solve for an opposing coaching staff. And that's what you don't have when you don't have a bench. It's not just about, getting minutes out of guys' legs and being able to play somebody 32 minutes instead of 36 minutes or whatever. It's also being able to change the game with your substitutions and force mismatches on an opponent and dictate the terms of the game. And Indiana, just really kind of struggled to do that for the last couple of years for a variety of reasons. And it's early, obviously, this year, but it does feel like Indiana is going to have much more of a bench to call on this winter than it's had in the past.
Well, speaking of changing the calculus, we talked about this a little bit earlier, but we thought it was interesting that basically when St. John's went small, Woodson decided to go away from Michael Durr and didn't go back to him because he felt like it wasn't the right matchup. Is that something that we could see going forward? Is that something that you expect to see going forward? Is Indiana going basically with Trace back at the 5? And if other teams go small?
And he even took Trace Jackson out there at the end of the game and put Jordan Geronimo in.
Yeah.
Yeah, the whole taking Trace out thing at the end of the game was a little different for me. But it worked. So, Mike Woodson wins and I don't. I think it's more just the advantage of being able to do it. And you also wonder too, maybe I know what Mike Woodson says, there's a part of me that also wonders if Michael Durr is a little bit fitter. We know he's just coming off the injury. This is only his second. He didn't even play in the Bahamas. This is only his second game in an IU uniform. He's probably still, kind of finding his game legs, and you can't fault him for that. You totally understand why. But if he's played 10 games, and his sort of game level fitness is up where you want it to be, are things a little different? Maybe, and maybe you feel like you can trust him for longer stretches of time. I think it's pretty, the only way I see Trace Jackson Davis playing a lot of 4 this season is if he's playing with Durr, and Durr is a genuine 3-point threat, which is something that we've heard Indiana talk about, but we haven't seen it yet. And again, that's just because Durr needs time. He needs time to, get back to sort of 100% sort of game sharpness, if you want to say. But I don't know how valuable both of those guys are on the floor together if neither one of them can step away from the basket. And I know we've seen Trace Jackson Davis hit a few jumpers, and that's fair. I still don't think it's something where you want him hunting 4 or 5 of those a night. And so I think that you can play Jackson Davis and Durr together if Durr can also be a guy that hits jumpers. And therefore, when you're in the half court, nobody gets to sag into the lane. Everybody's got to follow their man out to at least 15, 17 feet. Until we see that, I don't know how much of Durr and Jackson Davis we see, which means I think in the end you see mostly Jackson Davis at the 5. But again, it's also just sort of the advantage of it as well that these are options. Like depth, people think of depth in terms of bodies. I say this all the time in any sport. People think of depth in terms of bodies. Depth really for a coach is more about options. What kind of options do I have? Inevitably, invariably in the course of a game, a coach is going to see something he doesn't expect. He's going to, no matter how good his scout is, no matter how good his scouting report was, he's going to see something that he didn't expect to kind of come down the pipe, and he's going to have to figure out how to respond to it. And that's why you need options. And invariably in the course of a game, there's going to be, no matter how much he prepared, there's going to be moments when something goes wrong. There's also going to be moments when there's an opening that he didn't expect. When suddenly he sees a weakness in a team that he didn't see on film, or he didn't get off his assistant coach's scouting report. And there it's going to be, okay, there's a weakness. Is there something on my bench I can use to exploit it? Or is there someone on the floor I can use to exploit it? And that's what depth is ultimately, in terms of talking about its quality, is do you have options? And I think that, again, we heard Mike Woodson say about Durr specifically that this maybe wasn't quite the game for him. And I get that. I understand that. I do sort of wonder if maybe it's the game for him if they play it again in a month and he's had a month's worth of games to just get his sea legs back. If maybe they're a little bit less hesitant about using Durr then, but one way or the other, the point is it gives you matchups. And if you do feel like, lower tempo games might fit him a little bit better, well, good news, the Big Ten's full of them. So he's going to be fine.
Well, we'll see again when they play on Sunday night, as my favorite time to play to go cover a sporting event, a basketball game on Sunday nights. That'll be fun after Saturday's football game, which Indiana takes on Minnesota. So lots to do this weekend, Zach, to keep us all busy.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. It's just that time
brother,
of year.
I appreciate you very much. Make sure you give Zach a follow from Indy Star. Be a subscriber, I am. And make sure you give him a read. His stuff is great. Zach, thanks, brother. Appreciate you.
Thanks for having me, as always.
You bet. Zach Osterman from the Indy Star joining us here on Indiana Sports Beat Radio. Hey, we got more coming up. Jeffrey the Greek joins us. And it's time to have some fun, maybe make some picks, make fun of me, whatever. We're back with more right after this.
We'll be right back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington and Southern Stone Restaurant.
Whether it's a celebration or...
Hey, Jim, I got to take a phone call. I will be right back, okay?
No worries, brother.
Jeff, how are you?
Good. How are you guys doing? Happy Friday.
Pretty good. How are you, brother?
If I were any happier, I'd be twins.
I hear you. I'm looking at something that you should probably look into as well.
Okay.
A portable green screen.
Okay.
Because they're not that expensive, but it changes, with a green screen, you just have whatever the flip you want back there.
Yeah.
Which a guest was on the other day that had one. I'm like, man, we got to get that.
Looking good, huh?
Well, you can just take it with you. It's just too easy to put up. It's just like putting up the banner behind you.
You don't like my
no, I'm not talking
mine
about
that I got from Home Goods?
I'm talking about just me in general. I'm always thinking how to do this, how to do that. I'm like, man, just get a flipping green screen. You do whatever the flip
I think
you
for
want.
some guests, they would need it, but some people who have a good background, like obviously yourself and then Jeffrey, I mean, you all both have decent backgrounds, I feel like.
Yeah. I would say for me, the key is to have a simple background because if there's a bunch of shit going on, then people they're always looking behind you, is my thought process.
Yep. Yeah, that'd be funny. Put live video on behind.
Well, I mean, like the guys on ESPN, it's always like a bookshelf, and helmets. And I'm always like, okay, who's he got for the helmets? What's he reading? I'm always stuff.
I hear that. Well, there's one. 9 by 15 feet. $35. I could have it here tomorrow.
Dude, good deal.
I'm going to have to look into it, John.
Your call.
Well, I'll tell you what's really good for are mobile remotes.
Yeah, that's what I was going to suggest. It's when you're on remote.
Which I love natural backgrounds, but Like if you're in a restaurant or something.
All right. Let's go ahead and come back and break.
New 2021 or 2022 Honda Pilot, all the trims for 0% APR financing over 48 months and $0 down. Or how about a brand new 2021 Honda Passport, also 0% APR financing over 48 months and $0 down. Get more to your door with AndyMooreHonda.com.
Come see us at the all-new Andy Moore Honda, now in Bloomington.
Today's guest is brought to you by Reynolds Family Dentistry of Sellersburg. You need $1 million smile for those championship photos, and that's exactly what you'll get with Reynolds Family Dentistry.
Now back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington and Southern Stone Restaurant.
Welcome back. Jeffrey the Greek joins us. It means it's fun time, baby. Dylan Sinn with us, of course, still from Fort Wayne Journal-Gazette. How's it going, Jeffrey?
I'm having a great day. How are you guys doing?
Doing fine. I had a daggone three-leg parlay that I almost hit the night before last that I was so excited about. Did a little basketball, took Spartans over Butler. They only gave up 3, and they ended up crushing them. And I took the under in the Indiana game. Got it by 1 point.
Yikes.
But I made the mistake, being I'm a novice. I should have taken Indiana on the money line, being it's a parlay, and I gave up 5 points. The standard the line was, and they didn't cover.
Three-legged parlays are like three-legged stools. You kick one leg out and you fall on your ass. That's just how it goes.
You ain't lying, man. How are you doing, brother?
I'm great. Looking forward to, we got all seven games, 14 teams in the Big Ten are in action tomorrow. So it should be another fun day.
Big Ten football, man. It is coming down to a close, but we still have some important games that are on the docket, as you said. Here, of course, Minnesota comes into Bloomington to play Indiana at a 3:30 game. That the importance there is for Minnesota. It's important for Indiana because they need to find some life. They need to find a reason to come to practice on that Monday, if you know what I mean. This is the last game, and I think they have a shot to win in the season, and the last game that they have, Big Ten game that they have a shot at winning, I think, to go winless for the first time in like a decade or longer.
Yeah, I would actually feel better about them winning next week because there's something to fight for when you're playing, in a rivalry game like that. I don't know what is going to get them up for this game. Certainly they're playing at home. This is senior day, right? This is our last game at home, I believe. Yeah. So there is something there, but I don't know. Things aren't good in Bloomington right now with regards to the football team, which is unfortunate to see. We talked on the podcast if Leo love each other has turned into Leo loathe each other in Bloomington. We're hearing rumors about there's an illness going through the football team. And then it's just kind of sometimes, it's just a bunch of bad things that happen at once where you got high expectations to start the year, injuries and some bad luck kind of mixed in with, maybe not as much tradition and fan apathy. And it just all has kind of combined together to be a really tough year for the Hoosiers.
Yeah, it has. And we'll see how Saturday's game turns out. There's really no reason to beat the drum on that one. But some other Big Ten games that we can look at. Nebraska travels to number 15, Wisconsin. I don't know what to say. Nebraska is without their entire offensive coaching staff, basically, traveling up to play at Wisconsin. That's not going to be an enjoyable experience, I wouldn't think, for the Cornhuskers. So I don't. It's not showing me the spread on this game for some reason, but
Yeah, it's right around. It should be about 9 right now.
But Nebraska has they've been game all year at least. They've fought and they've tried to compete. I guess you'd say.
I mean, they haven't been blown out in any of their games this year, right? It's been, I mean, they've lost most of them, but they haven't ever been blown out, even against some of the teams they played that are really, really good.
Yeah, they. I think the record for 1-score losses in a season is, I believe, 7, and I think they're sitting at 6 1-score losses right now with 2 to go, so they could technically get a record that they don't want to get. Last week, or not last week, last time they played, which was Ohio State, they were idle last week. That was their first more than 1-score loss, and that's versus obviously a very deadly Ohio State team, but that was only by 9 points. So this line started higher. It was 10.5. It got all the way down to 8 in some spots, and now it's back up to 9. So it's danced all around. I mean, I got a lot of things going through my head in this game, which is in Wisconsin's favor. It's just that Nebraska offensive line going against that the Nebraska offensive line going against the Wisconsin front 7. That would give me a panic attack if I was a Nebraska fan. But on the other side, Nebraska's defense has been really good at limiting opposing teams' rushing attack. And that's the way to slow down Wisconsin, obviously, is if you can put the game in Graham Mertz's hand and put some pressure on him. That typically has been good for the opposing team. So I can really see this game going both ways, in that it's a tight game, and then taking the points. But in the end, like, there's more to like about Wisconsin. They have a ton of momentum going into this game. So I've got Wisconsin covering this, but I've only got it 23-13, so I don't love it.
No, you don't. And some of these games at this time of year are for teams that they know where they are. They may approach games differently. This next game I'm looking at. This could be. Is this a trap game? Michigan at Maryland.
Yeah, Maryland. That's how they're always the trap team, Iowa on Friday night playing Maryland. That was a tough spot. Michigan State playing them last week, before playing Ohio State. That was a trap game, and now Michigan has them in kind of a trap spot. So I can see it. And to be a trap team, you have to be a team that's, not highly ranked, but yet have the talent to pull off the upset, kind of like Purdue. And now Maryland, it's there. But, man, khaki pants in these type of games, you would think before Ohio State that he would have a bad record, but he typically overperforms in these games where he not only beats the team, but he covers easily. And then on top of that, when Maryland loses games, they don't just lose them. They lose them spectacularly, especially when they're going against good opponents. So I've got Michigan covering this spread this week. But again, not by much. I feel like Vegas is absolutely dialed into these lines for the most part this week.
The thing with Harbaugh is that as a favorite, Harbaugh has been absolutely outstanding at Michigan throughout his entire tenure. When Michigan is the favorite, they win, and they win big in a lot of cases. So that's definitely the trend to look at this week. Obviously, it's much different when he's the underdog and has had hardly any success at all. But that is definitely something to consider this week.
Yep, absolutely.
Let's see. Who did you take in that one?
I got Michigan. I got Michigan covering in that one. I've got 34-17. I mean, that's that's a 15-point line. I mean, that's only a 2-point cover.
I haven't seen it on my app that I'm looking at. There we go. I've got them they're 15.5.
Unfortunately, my favorite play this week is Minnesota covering the 7.5.
That doesn't shock me. I mean, yeah. How could you not? I mean,
Minnesota had a tough loss last week versus Iowa for the Pig. and then they play Wisconsin next week. So this is a sandwich game. I understand that they could be, a little flat, but I think they want to win. I think they want some momentum before they play Wisconsin. This is not a team that is gonna, think they're just gonna be able to skate by it. And on top of that, they just got a monstrous O-line and rushing attack that I think can lean on Indiana pretty bad. And then on top of it, Minnesota's defense is, I believe, 8th in the country in total defense. Like, it's the sneakiest good defense that people doesn't know about. So the under looks pretty good to me, but I would say Minnesota, covering the 7.5 is the best.
What is the under in that?
I have got, this was a couple days ago, but I think it was at 43. My guess is it's probably come down a little bit, but it should be right around 42, 43.
I gotta keep. I wish you could. I'm on the app that I'm on. I wish I could separate it by conference, but I cannot do that.
I know they don't let you do it on any. I don't know why.
It drives me insane. But I'll tell you another that you talked about, that Nebraska at Wisconsin. On mine, it's a 9. It's only a 9.
Okay.
And the over under is 43, and I'm like, really? I mean,
that's the respect Wisconsin's defense is getting right now. If not for the behemoth that is Georgia, most people, I would think, would consider Wisconsin the best defense in the country.
Man, so you don't think that in the Nebraska-Wisconsin game that those two teams, as much points as Wisconsin has put on the board, and Nebraska's been playing okay, I mean, that's only 21.5 points per team.
It's been a wonderful year in the Big Ten this year with these defenses and mediocre quarterback play and offenses, to put it nicely. I mean, this week, 7 games, I picked 6 unders. Every week I sit down to predict. I'm like, okay, this is going to be the week where my totals are going to go over, but they're either right at it or under every time. And there's a chance. I will say Nebraska has had success in the past moving the ball against Wisconsin's defense better than most teams in the Big Ten. But I just feel like I'm not 100% sure how confident how confident Adrian Martina is for health wise. And then again, just the overall psyche of this Nebraska team after the big announcement right before the idle week and all the offensive coaches being gone. It's not hard for me to picture this game being 10-0, beginning of the second quarter. And then you start wondering how much fight Nebraska has to come back in a game like that.
The Indiana-Minnesota game, you talked about that. The over-under there is the exact same, where it's 43.5. You mentioned that. But in the Nebraska-Wisconsin game, I'm counting on both of those teams to score. I don't know that you can count on Indiana to score in this game. And you would then have to count on, like you did last week, Rutgers to do all of the scoring. So how does that over-under look in that Indiana-Minnesota game to you?
I like the under. It's just most of the time in any of these games, you would see the under getting blown up because of special teams or turnovers. Minnesota does as good a job as they can taking care of the ball. Same with Wisconsin. The two outliers with that would be Indiana's offense. But I will say McCauley has done a pretty good job. Like he's still figuring it out, but he has not turned the ball over. So really the in the under, something getting blown up would be Nebraska's offense turning the ball over. That's what scares you the most.
Well, I'll tell you, my 3, Purdue, there's no way that they're and just 11 after that game last week. Man, I think that they're going to just go over at Wrigley Field, enjoy that, and put up some points.
Yeah. My only question is, does the Northwestern grounds crew have the say over the grass height in Wrigley like they do at home? Because they grow their grass in Northwestern, where it's like up to your past your ankles. So maybe that'll speed up the game a little bit. But I'm with you there. I think Purdue to cover the 11. I mean, Purdue's just a better team. They got a better defense. They got a better offense. Northwestern is struggling, and you could maybe say to a certain degree they're looking to next week too to play Illinois. I mean, I know it's probably not a rivalry that's going to get, you know, a 30 for 30 special anytime soon, but that's the only way Northwestern can end the year on a high note is if they beat Illinois next week. So I wouldn't be surprised if they're a little distracted too.
Yeah, we've got more to talk about, but that Michigan State at Ohio State and 19 points, I think they cover that easy. Michigan State is just not what I think that a lot of people think they are.
Yeah, you know, it's crazy. Both my podcast partner and I, Big Kurt, we both picked Ohio State to cover. I've got 49-24. So that's a pretty easy cover, 25 points, like a 6-point touchdown cover. But man, I have read a lot and listened to a lot of podcasts, and a lot of people are on Sparty. It's Sparty's playing at home, and they're that team that just always rises up. And for the moment, you know, this year, so I can understand, you know, I can see the script in my head where Michigan State makes this a game, but I'm just not betting against Ohio State. That's what I know. That offense is an absolute juggernaut, and I don't know if you guys know this, but Michigan State is not near the bottom. They are at the very bottom in pass defense in the Big Ten side. Like I keep picturing like taking Michigan State in the points, and Ohio State has, you know, 300 yards passing at halftime, and you say to yourself, why in the bleep did I take Michigan State and the points here going against this passing attack? I can't get that out of my head.
Yeah, I mean, because what could happen is basically what we saw last week with Ohio State Purdue, where Purdue had a great game offensively. Aiden O'Connell threw for almost 400 yards. They moved the ball up and down the field. They scored 31 points, and it didn't matter because Ohio State put 60 on.
100%. Like I think what Michigan State needs to do as much as humanly possible is make Ohio State score touchdowns from inside the red zone. So if you are doing the drop 8, you know, they're going to have a, you know, nickel back, go to another D back, have 6 D backs out there, whatever it takes to limit the explosive plays, take the angles to push those Ohio State receivers out of bounds by about the 15-yard line or whatever, make Ohio State score their touchdowns in there. If Ohio State, you know, touches up this Sparty defense with 40, 50-yard passes, game over, man.
We've got more coming up. Jeffrey the Greek is sticking with us. We've got more on Indiana Sports Beat Radio right after this.
We'll be right back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington and Southern Stone Restaurant.
Whether it's a celebration, man, I might go crazy this week and do a four-leg parlay.
Look at this addiction you formed.
Well,
is this new?
Oh yeah, I'm not a better.
Really?
Oh yeah, I mean, it's not like I've never bet. I've just never. I've never. I hate losing money that I don't have. It drives me insane.
Good rule to live by.
But I've been doing okay on my app. I started with like $100. I got up to maybe up to 600 or 500. Nice. I'm at 400 now. That one the other night, it just rankled me because I was so freaking close. And I'm like, God, that'd put me up there good for the basketball season. But, man, because I like Purdue. I like Ohio State. I like Minnesota and the under in the Indiana game.
Yeah.
What Indiana game do you not like the under in? That's probably the good question.
Yeah, that's not been the case all year.
Yeah, same with Iowa.
Jim, you're not supposed to bet the rent money. Has no one ever told you that?
This is $50, baby. I'm just doing $50 bets, man. Yeah, I don't bet big. That's for damn sure. But that's the thing. If you hit these freaking parlays, they set you up for a minute. I mean, like a $50 4-leg parlay, that'll probably pay $500 something. Oh
yeah. Yep, those are fun. They just rarely hit, and that's why Vegas keeps taking them.
God damn it. And then when you add a 4-leg, that makes it even more difficult.
Yeah. I'm like competition, and I like being. So for me, I take a ton of just straight up spreads and then over unders as well, because then suddenly that Maction game on Wednesday night, it's got my attention. That's pretty much how I roll.
Just seems harder to make money that way.
It is. I mean, honestly, like if there was a way I could sign up where I just broke even every year, but I got all of that entertainment, I would be perfectly fine with that. I just love getting entertained.
Yeah. Well, you're sitting there like, oh man, you need to do that. Oh man, come on. You're a little more into the games when you do that.
Oh, yeah.
That's for damn sure.
My kids usually go to bed at like 8:30, and if some of those games started, at 6:30 or 7, I've got the whole second half to entertain myself before I inevitably pass out at 10 o'clock.
I think even if I was really wealthy, I would have trouble betting big, because losing big drives me absolutely insane.
The losses hurt. The losses hurt more than the wins. There's no doubt about that.
That's everything with me in my life. Whether it's been sports,
For Indiana
the
Sports
losses
Beat
hurt
Radio.
more.
This segment is brought to you by Remax Advanced Realty, Indy Home Pros team by Cheryl Sizemore. Now back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington and Southern Stone Restaurant.
Welcome back, Indiana Sports Beat Radio, coming to you on this Friday. It's pretty nice out there. If you look outside the windows, just don't go outside because it's cold. I'm sure it's pretty chilly west of us over there in Iowa.
Yeah, I'm in Minnesota, so I'm even further north. I had an outdoor meeting yesterday. I got about 50 minutes in. I'm like, guys, time to wrap this up. My feet are gonna freeze to this.
You got an outdoor meeting in Minnesota?
Yeah, I mean, it has to do with what I do for a living. It's in.
Do you live in Minnesota, or do you travel from Iowa? Do you live in Iowa?
I grew up in Iowa, but I live in Minnesota.
My best friend from college lives up there as well. Follows the show on here quite a bit.
Nice.
But I asked him the same thing I asked you. What the hell were you thinking, man? Why would you move to Minnesota? Who moves to Minnesota?
I wanted to go to a bigger city after I graduated. So my two places were either 3 hours north to the Minneapolis, St. Paul, or 3 hours south to Kansas City. If I would have gotten a job offer first in Kansas City, that's where I would have been living.
Indianapolis, St. Louis, further south.
Yeah,
further south.
Yeah.
That's just Dylan's way too north for me, and he's still in Indiana, and he's too north for me. He's in Fort Wayne.
It is cold here today. It is 35 degrees out right now.
That's the temperature here.
Yeah.
Yep.
I'm from southern Indiana, and they call Bloomington southern Indiana, but I'm from southern Indiana. I mean, down at the bottom. And I remember being in school at IU. There's a freaking difference between there and here. The winters here were damn colder. And I'm not comparing it to even other places I know, but I'm like, trust me, it doesn't take much of an increment north to feel the difference at all. Not a winter fan, not a fan of winter. So I could not live in the north. Couldn't do it.
The best part of winter is the spring.
Yeah.
I mean, when
is that? July?
I mean, it could be into May. There's no doubt about that. But I mean, I love having a white Christmas. I'm old fashioned like that. But yeah, when you've gotten a snowblower out 14 times, going into the spring, you're ready for it to be done about April, May.
Yeah, I may have mistakenly said Ohio State was at Michigan State, but Michigan State is at Ohio State. And that's another reason. They're at home. Yeah. And they're only a 19-point favorite. Come on.
I know.
They were 21-point favorites over whoever they played last week. That was a decent team.
That was Purdue. Yeah.
Yeah, they were 21 points. Do you think, if anybody thinks that I think Michigan State has a better offense than Purdue, you're out of your mind. And Jeffrey just told you they've got the worst passing defense in the conference. So
I guess the biggest concern that I would have if you're betting Ohio State is that Yeah, they seem to have fixed their defense at least to a point from where they were struggling early in the year, but that doesn't mean that it's entirely fixed. They did give up 31 to Purdue, and Michigan State, while I think that Purdue has a better offense overall, Michigan State has a more for some big plays, and they don't have to drive all the way down the field to score points. So I think that would be my concern. If you're betting Ohio State, is that Michigan State puts together 2, 3, 4, 40 to 50 yard plays and stays within striking distance in that way. I think that'd be the one concern that I would have.
Yeah, I would say the biggest concern if you are an Ohio State bettor is the backdoor cover for Michigan State. That's what scares me the most. I mean, I don't know if I agree that Purdue has a better offense than Michigan State. Purdue has a better passing attack than Michigan State, but Michigan State's got, pretty good explosive passing attack as well. And then they got a literally Heisman Trophy candidate with Kevin Walker rushing the ball. I mean, to beat a team like Ohio State, who I don't think is great defensively, but still to beat a team like Ohio State, you've got to keep up with them. And to keep up with them, you got to have a balanced offense. I think Michigan State has that. Michigan State is actually really good at getting to the quarterback, right? Which is insane when you have literally the worst passing defense in the country. Like, you just don't see those two things ever jiving together like that. So that is one thing I think of. Can Michigan State figure out a way to get to the Ohio State quarterback, to CJ Stroud, because he's still a young quarterback, like this is still a big moment for a young quarterback, but I haven't seen it, but that's the approach is put pressure on the quarterback. Don't give up big plays, which, by the way, good luck with that against Ohio State. But no matter what happens on that side of the ball, Michigan State's going to have to put up a lot of points. Like, I can't imagine them winning this game by putting up any less than, in all honesty, 40 points. Like, I think they have to get to 40 points to have a shot to beat Ohio State.
And is there any chance in hell that Michigan State can put 40 on Ohio State? I just can't imagine that.
Yes. The last green rushing attack we saw come into the horseshoe, 7-8 weeks ago, they put on a lot of points versus Ohio State with Oregon. Not exactly the same teams, not exactly the same rushing attack, but I'm still not in love with that Ohio State defense and really front seven. The linebackers, they're hit and miss and with a lot of miss. So it would not surprise me to see Michigan State put up a ton of points.
One that I didn't talk about is your favorite, Illinois at Iowa. That is only a 12.5 point spread. Illinois is a dangerous team because they've been just dangerous. They're trying, man. They're trying. Iowa has been up and down, 12.5 point spread, but only a 38.5 over under, 38.5 over and under. Obviously, neither of these teams are offensive juggernauts, but that's a pretty low number there.
You're going to tune into this game for one reason only: the punting. And I'm serious, man. It's gonna be an epic punting show. Mark my words. Big Kurt and I on the Eyes on Big podcast, we lovingly consider ourselves a punting podcast. So this is the championship right there. But Iowa has looked better since they switched to Alex Padilla, the backup quarterback, who I think is considered the starter now. Much more mobile. He's got more pocket awareness. So the sacks have gone down and the passing attack has gone up a little bit. So that could be a way that Iowa puts enough points on the board to cover the 12.5. But Illinois they've kind of been a giant slayer this year. They beat a ranked Penn State team on the road. They beat a ranked Minnesota team on the road. Now they go on the road to play Iowa here. It is a really good, a very much improved Illinois defense. Their defensive coordinator just got an extension and he deserved it. He's done a great job. So, and then you've got Beetle, Brett Bielema, who I lovingly called Beetle, going against his alma mater. He will not be making the trip unfortunately. But trust me, he's put a little bit of extra into the game plan with them being idle last week. So I don't love it, but I like Illinois catching the 12.5.
You like Illinois catching the 12.5?
I do. This just screams.
That's it jumped out at me too. What about that over under?
I mean, so I predict 23-13. That's 36 points. That's not even a field goal under that under. Like one of these times, I would like to open it up the app and say, "Oh my gosh, we got a 44-point game total." No, we're still 2 points underneath 40. So again, if you're gonna make me choose, I'm gonna choose the under here. But one explosive play by either team and a special teams gaffe, that's really typically all it takes for these teams to go over. So buyer beware.
Yeah, that one's a scary one. There was a non-Big Ten game, that caught my attention because it was Kansas. Because last week, I remember going through the app, and I'm looking, and I kept seeing, and it was alive. They were playing. I'm like, why do they have the damn basketball game in here? I kept thinking it was Kansas and Texas playing basketball because of the numbers they kept putting up. Yeah. Kansas was negative whatever. I'm like going, why the hell do they have this in here? This can't. I'm like, wait a minute, this it? What? Yeah. This is right. I could not believe my eyes. Kansas beat the crap out of Texas last week. Now this week, they're a 21-point dog on the road to TCU.
Yeah.
21 points. Seems like a lot of points for a team that did what they did last week.
Horns down, right? Yeah, I tell you what, Kansas got up for that game. Texas is struggling, so there's no doubt about it. I have bet on Kansas one time this year. I will remain one time this year that I will bet on Kansas because it just is too typical for Kansas to get up for this game and say, hey man, we got the big win this week, and then they kind of go back to being Kansas. So if you made me choose, I would probably take Kansas in the points, but I just on principle alone, betting on Kansas to cover is just typically not a good idea.
Yep. Now I know you stay mainly in the Big Ten. Anything outside of that has caught your eye that you've looked at?
Well, I'll give a shout out to my guy Chappie. He's another college football guy that we really like, and he's Boston College -1.5 versus Florida State. I like that. I think maybe Cincinnati has got something to prove, covering 11 or 12 versus SMU, and then this is just a personal one. Always kind of considered myself a closet Utah fan, but they're just getting so many pats on the back right now. Everybody's just assuming they're going to beat Oregon. The last time I watched Oregon and Utah play in a big game, Oregon kind of spanked that Heine and just had so much more talent. I'm inclined to lean to Oregon covering in that game.
Yeah, it's only a 3-point. Mine's only 3-point.
Wait, is Utah favored in that game?
Yeah,
I believe they are.
3-point.
Wow.
Utah is a 3-point favorite at home against the Oregon Ducks.
I think we've talked about Oregon for so long as like this team that's kind of an imposter in the top 10. They've gone from overrated in the polls to underrated in the minds of a lot of people. Oregon is a good team. They might not end up making the playoff, but they are not like this imposter.
And they're in they continually get put in a perfect spot where they're a good team. They're ranked high, but people dog on them, which keeps keeps the motivation going. So I'm with you there.
Well, man, it has been another fun one. I'm going to have to sit there and study and go down. I'm getting these in. I'm going to get my little $50, or maybe I'll do 2. I've got enough to possibly do 2 this week.
Do it like Dustin Schutte. Just let your dog pick it. It's just as good.
Is that what he does?
Yeah.
Oh, well, I'll have to he's on Thursdays with us. I haven't asked him about that.
Yep.
Next year on our podcast, my dog and his dog are going to battle it out.
That's fantastic.
I hope they both make more money than you all do.
What we should do is Jeff versus Jim and dog versus dog, and
There you go.
There you go. Yeah.
There you go, man. Man, I cannot thank you enough. As always, brother, it is a blast. I will keep you informed as to what transpired over the weekend for me, as I always do. Wins, losses, I tell you. So
always looking for my updates.
Man, it'll be a fun weekend, though. Another fun weekend of college football. Basketball is underway as well. So go out and have a great time this weekend, brother.
Yeah, it's Eyes on Big podcast is our podcast. I'm Jeffrey the Greek at Jeffrey the Greek. Please feel free to follow. Thank you.
There you go. Eyes on Big podcast, Jeffrey the Greek and his partner, Big Kurt.
Big Kurt.
And I meant to tell you, you need to have him come on with you sometime.
Sure.
Welcome to join us anytime. Maybe when we get towards next week or as we get to the Big Ten championship.
Yeah.
It's all fun times. Not throughout the rest of the college football playoffs. We've got other teams to talk about, so we'll do it. Have fun. Guys, have a great weekend. Dylan, thank you, man. I know you're going to be out traveling. Where are you Saturday, and are you here Sunday?
Yeah, I will be Saturday. I will be at Notre Dame, Georgia Tech, as Notre Dame tries to make its late season push here. And then
Is
Sunday,
Rudy playing?
Rudy is not playing. Yeah, he won't make it in that one. But yeah, Sunday I will be in Bloomington for Indiana, Louisiana, as the Hoosiers try to get to 4-0.
As I will be as well, man. I cannot thank all these guys as well. Big thanks to Zach Osterman from the Indy Star, Alec Lasley from the Hoosier.com, Indiana Rivals, and John, the producer. But most importantly, thanks to you guys. Without you, we've got no reason to be here. Have yourselves a great weekend. I'll be at the game and tomorrow, and then basketball on Sunday. Until then, I'm Jim Coyle. I will see you on the radio.